If you're a man over 60 and you still masturbate, good. It means you're still connected to your body. It means you're alive. It means you're still trying. And that effort, it matters. Because I've worked with too many men who gave up on themselves far too early. They thought slowing down was the end of the road. They thought fading sensitivity, weaker erections, or emotional distance was just normal. But what if I told you it's not the end? What if I told you it's not even close? Because in all my years helping men preserve sexual function, emotional vitality, and confidence well into their 70s and 80s, here's what I've learned. It's not the act itself that causes problems, it's how you do it. And most older men are making at least one of four key mistakes when it comes to self-pleasure. Not out of shame, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because no one ever taught them what changes after 60. The nerves are different. The blood vessels respond differently. The hormones fluctuate. The emotional connection shifts. Yet many men are still stuck in habits they learned at 16 and wondering why it's not working anymore. I'm Dr. Richard Gavin. I've helped thousands of men restore sensitivity, connection, and confidence in the second half of life. And today, I want to walk you through the four dangerous masturbation mistakes I've seen destroy men's pleasure and joy without them realizing it. Let's fix that. Starting with mistake one. But what if I told you this one habit isn't just robbing your pleasure? It may be rewiring your brain in ways that quietly sabotage everything else. Mistake one. Rushing through it like you're still 25. This one's more common than most men realize. When I speak to men over 60 about their self-pleasure habits, there's often a quiet chuckle, a glance down, and then a confession that sounds something like this. Yeah, doc, I just get it done and move on. Fast, frantic, functional. A leftover habit from teenage years, maybe even early adulthood, when the goal was pure release. Get in, get out, move on. But here's what most men don't understand. After 60, your nervous system changes. Your response time slows, not because something is wrong, but because your body is more selective. The male nervous system, after 60, takes longer to arouse, longer to build up blood flow, and longer to recover afterward. So if you keep rushing, you may still finish. But what you're doing under the surface is quietly damaging your long-term sexual function. Here's what I see in my patients who keep treating self-pleasure like a sprint. Diminished sensitivity, weaker and shorter erections, a steep drop in satisfaction, that drained, disconnected feeling after climax. They often don't even associate it with their habits. They think it's aging. But I tell them the truth. You're not a teenager anymore, and that's not a weakness. It's an invitation to go deeper, to reconnect, to heal, not just release. Why slowing down helps. When you slow the process down, when you let arousal build gradually, something powerful happens. Nitric oxide, the molecule that fuels erections, has time to activate. Blood flow becomes more complete. Your pelvic nerves engage fully, sending clearer, stronger signals. You actually protect and train your erectile tissue instead of depleting it. This isn't fluff, it's physiology. Self-pleasure becomes more like a tune-up than a breakdown. Think of it like warming up an old sports car. You don't rev the engine cold and slam it into gear. You let the oil circulate. You listen to the hum. You take it for a thoughtful ride. Your body, at 60, 70, even 80, deserves the same care. So here's what I recommend. Start by slowing down. Put the focus back on sensation rather than speed. Use your breath, feel the warmth, and let go of the idea that climax is the only goal. When you do this, you're not just pleasuring yourself. You're reconditioning your body to feel more, respond better, and stay healthier for years to come. Remember, you're not broken. You're just being asked to adapt, to mature into a new kind of masculinity that honors time and awareness. And trust me, when you learn how to slow down with yourself, everything changes, with your partner too. But slowing down is only one part of the puzzle. Because if you're still using one harmful physical habit, something most men do without even realizing it, You might be training your body into numbness. That's mistake two. And once this becomes a pattern, it can be surprisingly hard to undo. Let's talk about it. Mistake two, using too much pressure or the death. Grip technique. This is one of the most damaging habits I see in men over 60, and most don't even realize they're doing it. Somewhere along the way, maybe after losing some sensitivity, maybe after noticing erections weren't quite as strong, many men started gripping harder. Not emotionally, physically. I'm talking about the death grip. A tight, repetitive, high-pressure technique that feels like the only way to achieve climax. But here's the catch. The more you rely on that intense pressure, the more you condition your body to only respond to it. And that creates a vicious cycle that's hard to escape. Your penis isn't built for that kind of contact. It's not a muscle. It's not a pump. It's a vascular and sensory organ, incredibly delicate and designed to respond to warmth, variation, rhythm, and subtle stimulation. When you repeatedly use high friction and intense grip, especially with dry hands or rough motion, here's what happens over time. Desensitized nerve endings in the glands, head, difficulty climaxing with a partner because your body expects much more force, orgasms that feel flat like something's missing, even if you finish, pelvic nerve fatigue, where the response time becomes slower and weaker, and perhaps most important of all, you begin to disconnect from what real pleasure feels like. I've had men in their 60s and 70s sit across from me and say, "Doc, I just can't feel much anymore. Even when I do finish, it's nothing like it used to be." And I always ask them one question: how are you touching yourself? If the answer involves speed, pressure, and routine, we have work to do. So what do you do instead? Start with awareness. If you've been using tight grip or high pressure stimulation for years, your nervous system is conditioned to that standard. But the good news is, it can be retrained. Here's how. Use natural oils like coconut or almond oil, something that allows for smooth, gentle movement. Loosen your grip. Try open palm. Try using your fingertips. Explore different areas, not just the shaft. Practice variation, circular motions, slower rhythms, occasional pauses. Breathe deeply. Tune into your pelvic floor muscles. Are they clenched the whole time? If so, relax them. Think of this like physical therapy for your pleasure. You're not just seeking release, you're restoring responsiveness. It might feel strange at first. You may not finish as quickly or at all, and that's okay. Because this isn't about speed, it's about healing. What you're doing is giving your nerves, blood vessels, and brain time to remember what real touch feels like. You're reclaiming pleasure as something nourishing, not just functional. And once you do that, you'll likely find that intimacy with your partner becomes easier, more connected, and more satisfying. Not because you're trying harder, but because your body knows how to respond again. But there's still another habit, one that doesn't involve your hands at all, yet may be causing just as much damage. Mistake three, watching too much porn and nothing else. This one's tricky. Let me be clear, I'm not here to shame anyone for watching adult content. In fact, I've spoken to hundreds of men who use it occasionally and have no major issues. But I've also spent over 2 decades studying how arousal and sexual response change with age, and I've seen the long-term effects of daily, screen-dependent arousal in older men, and it's not pretty. Here's what happens when your brain is constantly fed synthetic stimulation. It begins to associate pleasure only with pixels, not with presence. Your dopamine receptors, those little motivation messengers, become less responsive. Real-life intimacy starts to feel dull, awkward, or underwhelming. You begin chasing more extreme content to feel the same arousal you once felt with simple touch. And worst of all, your sexual confidence begins to erode, not overnight, not in a dramatic way, but gradually until one day you realize that you can't get aroused unless a screen is on. That touch feels meh. That connection feels like effort instead of pleasure. This isn't about morality. This is about neurochemistry. Your brain was never wired to handle high-speed, high-variety, instant access arousal 24/7. Especially as you age, when your nervous system is naturally trying to slow down and regulate. So, what's the real mistake here? It's not porn itself, it's over reliance on it. It's when the screen becomes your primary source of stimulation, when you stop listening to your own body, stop engaging your imagination, stop being able to feel without external triggers. That's when I start seeing problems like delayed ejaculation, erectile dysfunction with a partner, loss of desire for real world intimacy, emotional disconnection during climax, and in some cases, complete loss of libido. The good news? It's reversible. You just have to retrain your mind and your body. Here's what I recommend: take a 7-day break. No porn, no screens, just you, your breath, and your awareness. Yes, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, your body might resist. But within a few days, many men report something powerful. Their imagination returns. They feel more connected to their breath and pelvic floor. Their arousal feels deeper, not just friction-based, and their confidence begins to come back. Try using fantasy, memory, even guided erotic audio. Explore what you find sensual, not what an algorithm tells you to enjoy. And most of all, practice being present. That's the missing ingredient in most men's self-pleasure rituals after 60, because when your arousal becomes a performance tied to pixels, you lose the ability to be with yourself. And that disconnect, it ripples into your relationships, your emotions, even your sense of self. But that brings us to one final mistake. A mistake that has less to do with what you're watching or how you're touching, and everything to do with why you're doing it in the first place. Mistake 4, using masturbation to numb instead of nourish. This is the one most men never talk about. Not to their doctor, not to their partner, not even to themselves. Because the truth is, many older men don't masturbate for pleasure anymore. They do it to escape from loneliness, from stress, from boredom, from grief, from that slow, dull ache in the chest they can't quite name, but deeply feel. And for a moment, it works. There's relief. There's release. There's calm. But then it fades, and you're back where you started, sometimes emptier than before. And you don't know why. It wasn't bad. It wasn't shameful. But somehow, it didn't give you what you were hoping for. That's because the real mistake here isn't the act. It's the intention behind it. As a doctor, I've sat across from men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who've confessed, "I'm not doing it because I'm turned on, doc. I'm doing it because I'm restless, or angry, or tired of being alone." That's when I ask the question that changes everything. Are you touching yourself to connect or to disconnect? Because that single shift, connection versus disconnection, determines whether your self-pleasure becomes healing or harmful. Over time, using masturbation as a numbing agent creates a subtle yet powerful ripple effect in your life. You start to withdraw from emotional intimacy. You stop reaching out to friends or family. You lose the desire to share space with your partner. You abandon your hobbies, your curiosity, your joy, and worst of all, you begin to carry a quiet, unnamed shame, not because you did something wrong, but because you feel emotionally hollow afterward. This kind of disconnection isn't fixed by more sex. It's not solved by performance-enhancing pills. It's a matter of emotional alignment. And here's the truth most men need to hear. There is nothing wrong with seeking comfort. There is nothing wrong with solo pleasure. But when it becomes your only outlet for emotional discomfort, when it's the only way you decompress or self-soothe, it can quietly take more than it gives. You deserve more than a 3-minute distraction from your emotions. You deserve nourishment, presence, depth. You deserve to feel alive during intimacy, even when it's just with yourself. So I want to challenge you. Next time you feel the urge, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this to numb or to feel more alive? The answer to that question might surprise you, but what comes next is even more important. Because if any of these mistakes felt familiar, if you've been rushing, gripping too hard, relying on porn, or using touch to avoid your own heart, you're not broken. You just need a new relationship with yourself, one that's built on awareness, compassion, and true connection. Which brings us to our final and most important section. And trust me, once you understand how to do this with care, clarity, and intention, everything else begins to change. Doctor's guidance: how to rebuild a healthy relationship with masturbation after 60. Here's the good news. You don't have to stop masturbating. You don't have to reject your desire, deny your body, or pretend you've outgrown the need for touch. But you do need to approach it differently. Because after 60, what used to work by default, friction, speed, fantasy, often starts working against you. And the solution isn't to give it up, it's to grow with it. Over the years, I've helped thousands of men build what I call a vital touch routine, a process that transforms masturbation from a quick release into a restorative ritual. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Here's what it looks like in practice. 1. Mindful stimulation, 2 to 3 times a week. Not daily, not compulsively, but a few times a week with full awareness. Treat it like a massage for your body and your spirit, not a race. Let arousal build slowly. Let your breath guide you. 2. Use natural oils and deep breathing. Switch out dry grip for natural oils, like coconut, almond, or jojoba. These protect sensitive skin and enhance tactile sensation. And while you touch yourself, breathe slowly and deeply. This calms the nervous system and increases blood flow. 3. Reduce or eliminate screens during arousal. The goal is to rewire your arousal back to you, your body, your mind, your breath, not digital images. If you've relied on porn for years, this might feel awkward at first. That's okay. In time, imagination becomes richer and more rewarding than anything on a screen. 4. Gentle pelvic floor awareness. Your pelvic floor plays a huge role in erections, climax control, and sensation. Tense it gently, then relax it. Tune in, feel where the muscles engage and soften. This alone can retrain your body to become more responsive and less reactive. 5. Post-touch rest and gratitude. Don't rush off the bed or immediately go clean up and forget. Lie still for a few minutes. Let the afterglow settle. Feel your breath. Place a hand over your chest or belly. Say something kind to yourself, out loud or in your mind. This ends the experience with gratitude instead of guilt and rewires your emotional memory around self-pleasure. And within just 3 weeks, most men report real change. Increased sensitivity and more varied sensation. Stronger erections, especially in the mornings. Natural arousal that comes from thought, touch, or emotional connection. And, most important, a sense of clarity, peace, and groundedness instead of post-release guilt or emotional emptiness. This is what happens when you stop using your body and start listening to it. When you stop rushing toward the finish line and start honoring the journey. Your body still remembers how to feel. It just needs the right environment to come back online. And once you reconnect here, don't be surprised if every other area of your life starts to feel more alive too: your sleep, your confidence, your relationships. Because this isn't just about sex. It's about coming home to yourself fully, gently, and with dignity. If you've been making one, or even all, of these mistakes, I want you to hear something clearly and without hesitation. You're not broken. You're not shameful. You're not too old. And you haven't missed your chance. You're simply evolving. No one ever handed you a manual for this part of life. No one sat you down and said, here's how your body will change. Here's how your arousal will shift. And here's how you can meet it with wisdom, not frustration. So, instead, you did what you've always done, tried to figure it out alone. But now you know. And that one truth can change everything. Because when you meet this new season of your sexual life with curiosity instead of shame, with intention instead of habit, with self-respect instead of self-judgment, you begin to reclaim a relationship with your body that is deeper, wiser, and more fulfilling than anything you experienced in your 20s. So the next time you touch yourself, pause, breathe, and ask, is this an act of connection or an escape? Am I here to heal or to hide? Because you still have access to joy. Your body still responds. And you still deserve to feel alive, whole, and worthy in every intimate sense of the word. If this message helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Because somewhere out there, another man is quietly wondering the same things, and your courage might be exactly what sets him free